Gosh, modern technology. Good evening, everyone. It is 6:03 p.m. This is the North Santiam Sewer Authority Board meeting and the North Santiam Joint Sewer Project Update number 54. It's June 3rd, 2021. As I already said, it's 6:03 p.m. This is meetings being held by Zoom conference call due to COVID-19. This is going to be an awesome meeting. We have made it. Yes, this is pretty cool. So, I'm all jazzed. I don't know about you folks, but
okay, who gave Ken some sugar?
I had a nap. I took my old man nap today. I got an hour and a half. Let's do roll call. Ken Woodward, present.
Jeff Yohe, present.
We see.
Dale Weesey, present.
Okay.
Joel Parks, present.
Okay, Shelley Engels present. See that in the chat. And Janet Zayan Hall.
Oh, we do have a quorum. And Tim's probably going to be late.
Sorry, I thought I was talking and I had the mute button on.
It's okay, we got you. And then if we can walk around. So Tim Kirsch will be a little bit late. He's already let us know that he gets out work a little bit late, so he'll be here shortly.
Let's start with Dallin. You want to introduce yourself and then Peter and everybody else?
Yeah, my name is Dallin Stevens. I'm with Keller Associates. I am the technical advisor slash process engineer involved in the wastewater master plan.
Thank you.
Peter Olson, project manager with Keller Associates. And yeah.
Yeah, the master plan.
Go ahead, Gordon.
Okay, I'm Gordon Wilson with FCS Group, and I've been working on the business case analysis.
Thank you. Arthur.
Hey everybody, I'm Arthur Chapman with Business Oregon. Many of you may have known Denny Cool, who retired in April. I'm stepping into his role and glad to be here as part of this team.
Thank you. We don't know this McRae. Who's this McRae?
McRae Carmichael with the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments, and I'm involved with management of project engineering contract.
Cool, cool.
Yeah.
Danielle, and you are?
Yeah, Danielle Gonzalez, Marion County Economic Development, and the lead on the project.
All right.
We got one more. We got Garrett Ferricks with Keller. He's listening in as well.
And I see Jonathan Honeywell with Arenco. Jeff Yohe, you're getting a little bit of static. Is it okay if I put you on mute?
Yeah, I can mute myself from here if you like.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, there you go.
All right, we have a quorum and public comment and questions. Please limit public comment to 3 minutes each. Does anybody have any comments? Besides me. Hey, folks, this is awesome. We've worked so hard for so long. And as I got an email earlier today from Shelley, can't believe we're here. This is awesome. We are here. We've been waiting for this for a long time, and everybody has participated and done what they've done to get us to this point. And thank you goes out to everyone. No other comments? Old business. Action, approval of meeting summary notes. I understand they're not ready and will deal with us in the next meeting. Is that
Yes.
correct?
That is correct. And if anybody needs anything in the meantime, feel free to send people to the YouTube page. It actually has the upload of the meetings. Since March, all of those uploads are already there. If anybody needs to catch up or anything like that. So we will have those summary notes next month.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Action, treasury report, review and pay bills if necessary. Joel.
There are no new bills, so our treasury report is the same as last month. So we have a remaining balance of $766.95 and a credit with Spear Hoyt or local government law group for $1,932.
And I started using that money, just so we know. I've been having communications with the attorney. So specifically on questions of what we need to have for the state requirements. So just FYI, we'll start hopefully seeing that credit go down.
Okay, Danielle's using the money. All right, action number E. Oh boy, election of chair and treasurer to a 2-year term, vice chair, secretary, and communications to a 1-year term to take effect July 1st, 2021.
So Ken, we did not get to update the policies and procedures yet. The current IGA says 1-year terms, and so we have to comply with the 1-year term until we change our policies and procedures. So if we could do one more 1-year term, and then next year we'll be able to shift into that 2-year term, if you guys are there.
Yes, we need to follow the policy and procedures.
Thank you.
So,
Shelley has a comment.
Chair Woodward,
Shelley.
I would like to nominate Ken Woodward as chair of the NSSA for the next year, beginning on July 1st, 2021.
Seconded?
Joel, was that you second it?
Yeah.
Shelley nominated Ken Woodward for the 1-year term.
And Janet, do you want to walk through a call for votes on that?
Joel second.
Are we going to close it just with one
You're
person?
can barely hear you.
Janet, we can't hear you.
Are we going to close it with just
Oh.
one person up, or?
Well,
So let's start there. Let's ask that question. Are we doing, because we don't have a rule for this, are we doing all together or as a slate or individually? We can go all together as a slate, which is what we did last time.
So
Office, or are we going to do?
Go ahead.
Dale said all together in the chat. Sorry, Janet, you cut out just as you were talking.
So are we going to go just with one nomination for the position, or do we have additional nominations?
Thank you for asking that.
So do we have any additional nominations for the position of chair?
Janet, I'm not sure if it's my mic or yours, but I can barely hear you. I can hear everybody else.
Is that any better?
Oh, so much better.
If
Thank
you can put the microphone closer to your mouth, because I think that's what the problem is.
Okay, I'll hold it here. So, so do we have any other nominations for the position of chair? I see everybody shaking their head no. All those in favor of Ken Woodward as chair say aye, or do we want to do a roll call?
Since there's no other nominations, I think an aye would be okay.
Okay. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Dale says aye from the chat.
Okay, anybody opposed? Silence, Ken, before I ask that though, okay?
Do what?
Jeff Yowie, I don't believe we got a response from you.
Muted.
Aye.
Thank
Can
you.
you hear me now? Okay.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
And Joe, what was your vote?
Aye.
Okay.
Do I want to vote for myself? No. Aye.
Thank you.
All those opposed? You are the chair again, sir.
Oh, boy. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for another year of service. Vice Chair. Shelley.
Thank you. I would like to nominate, oh geez, Tim Kirsch as vice chair to the NSSA starting on July 1, 2021.
I will second that.
Okay. We got Shelley first. We got Ken seconding.
Are there any additional nominees? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Jeff Yowie, aye.
And you have Dale Weesey, aye from the chat.
Awesome. Any opposed? Tim is nominated. What's the next position you have, treasurer?
I have
Secretary.
Nominations for secretary.
Janet Zellen Hall. I nominate.
So Ken, is that a first?
That's a first.
Okay.
I second. Janet?
Okay. Jeff Yowie, second for Janet Hall.
Kelly, you had your hand up?
Oh, I was waiting for somebody to nominate you.
Okay. Any additional? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Dale, aye from chat.
At least you're popping up, Dale. I like that. All those opposed? Treasurer, do we have any nominations?
Joe Parks. You ain't getting out of this one.
So that was a first for Joel Parks from Ken.
I will second Joe Park. Jeff Yowie.
Thank you, Jeff Yowie.
Do we have any additional nominees? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye from Dale in the chat.
All those opposed? So Joel is our treasurer. What is the other position I heard?
Communications.
Communications. Do we have any
Shelley
nominees?
Engel.
I second that.
That was Joel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Joel second, Ken firsted.
Ken.
Made the motion.
Thank you. That's what I meant. Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Just gonna say it out loud. Dale eyed from the chat.
Just to back up a little bit, so we don't have Jeff Smith on here, correct?
That's correct. Jeff is not on right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
So we have now your chair again is Ken Woodward. Vice chair, did we vote on vice chair? Just double check to make sure.
Tim
We did,
Kirsch.
okay.
Yes, Shelley.
Tim
Yeah.
Kirsch for vice chair. We have secretary Janet Zayan Hall, communications. We have Shelley Engel. So there's no change to the leadership. Thank you very much for committing to another year moving forward.
Okay, update county legislative request for the North Santiam Sewer Project. I think that was a typo. It's supposed to be 60.
Well, and so that was actually, this is me clarifying. So I had 3 different letters from the county. 2 of them had $60 million on it. One said 50. But it looks like based on the 2, at least on the House bill, I was able to see specifically the 60 million request in there. So I'm going to assume the Senate request is the same. This is out of HB 3127-4. That's with the additional amendments. And then SB 5534. So these are the Oregon Video Lottery Emergency Funds specifically from the wildfire recovery. If these funds are approved, we will know by the end of the session. So by the end of this month at our next meeting, for sure, we should have indication of whether or not these will move forward. This is the thing that's being, from a political standpoint, this is what's holding members of the legislature in session without people walking out, is because they all need this money. And so they're holding on to it till the very last minute, my understanding is, to make sure that everybody stays for the entire session and does not walk out. So that's what I'm hearing. So that's what I know there. So we will know in less than 30 days.
What was the HB 31 what?
3127-4. So if you just look up 3127, it's the 4th amendments that they've added to it.
Okay, SB 5534 and the other one.
That's correct. And if I get good news in the meantime, I'll kind of let you guys know.
Yes.
So that is all for me.
Yes, where we're at now. Engineering and Design Master Plan Update. Peter Olson and McCray Carmichael. You have it all. I'm on mute.
Right. You're on mute. You guys hear me all right, I assume?
Yes, we do.
All right. All right. Checking the comments there. So I'm going to share my screen. See if we can do it. I was just testing it out.
Okay, let me know if you have trouble.
Hope this works.
You got it.
Right. Hey. Let me stretch my screen because I do like being able to see people's faces and everything, but it is not. There it goes. All right. Bear with me a second while I get set up. So we have, I think it's some odd 38, 40 some odd slides to get through. So I'm going to say this is going to be a long haul. A lot of these will be familiar. Some of them will be new. About a third of it or a little bit more is from FCS group with Gordon's going to cover those. I'm going to cover the technical stuff and the master plan part of it first, so that you'll actually listen to me. And then we'll let Gordon take it away with the more interesting stuff. So that's kind of the overall. All right. So yeah, as I said, I'm gonna summarize the recommendations. I'll flip through some of these slides pretty quickly. Yell at me, scream at me, tell me to stop, ask a question. I want to summarize the recommendations that we have. I'm not going to review every draft section. That's kind of what the slides are going to present, but it's not, section 1 here, we're going to talk about this, then 2, then 3. But I want you to ask your questions. And then also more importantly is any comments, any revisions, any edits, anything like that. Danielle and McRae, do you want them to just send those directly to me, have those filter through you? What's the best way to do that?
I would prefer them to be filtered through McRae and myself.
Okay. So from your reviews, please send those on to McRae and those will make their way to us, and we'll get those addressed. As far as overall next steps for the project, aside from the meeting today, we have a DEQ permitting meeting with GSI and some DEQ staff to talk about specifically the McCoy site and what do they want to see. We're kind of diving in more into the weeds and the details of that. That'll be next week. We have the TRC number 5 on the 10th. the afternoon of the 10th by Zoom.
That's technical review committee, just saying it out loud.
Yes, thank you. And then we'll have the July board meeting again, and then we have a second town hall meeting. We do not have this, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we have the specific date yet. Is that right, McRae and Danielle? So we will be scheduling that, but we wanted to get to this point first before we had that scheduled. And then going through the master plan adoption process. So this is a major milestone, but we have, there's quite a bit of work here just for the master plan to be finalized. And then of course, all the other heavy lifting that's gonna follow. And that heavy lifting, I just wanted to summarize real quick. As we look at it, this gives you a taste of what we're gonna be looking at. I mean, funding for Mill City Gates Basin, we're talking about Mill City's PER, the preliminary engineering report. We have short-term improvements. We have site identification, negotiations, and the testing monitoring for the Mill City disposal site, and then interim individual septic for Gates. We have Detroit and Idana. We're looking at the McCoy site testing and monitoring, and then interim individual septic going on there. So that's kind of the next phases. That's a very condensed version of a lot of things happening. As far as the report status, we got the draft sections out later in the weekend than I wanted, but over the weekend, I hope everyone was able to download that. Obviously, we can troubleshoot that individually if we need to after the meeting. But we do have additional sections and write-ups, with the executive summary being one. And then we have the geotechnical write-up, which is a summary of a number of really just figures with a very short explanation. That was about as far as the level of effort and scope went for this master planning process. And then we have the environmental permitting write-up. This is a critical component. We were working with SWCA as we were finalizing the draft sections. But it is a very key component. They've done a good job. They've provided a lot of good information of a summary of the permits that are going to be required for the entire project, and then also some thoughts and direction on how to arrive where we need to be as efficiently as we can. Also, the report status is we're presenting that to the technical review committee next week, provide any revisions to that plan, and then go through the adoption process. This is a figure that's in the draft master plan. This just shows historical efforts. I thought that was something interesting to document, at least here, of what the history of what we've been looking at as far as community wastewater systems in the canyon. Do not need to spend much time at all, if any, on that. The more important one is moving forward and what we look at. This is something we spent a pretty good deal of time trying to think through and process. I expect edits, modifications. I want I want to get into questions on this, but I'm going to provide the summary of the rest of the recommendations, and maybe we can step back at this one and look at it. But really, we're breaking it into the two basins with Detroit and Idana, Gates and Mill City, and moving forward, as I mentioned already, the Mill City short-term improvements to the existing facilities. These are replacing some valves, things like that, of that nature, while we move forward with a preliminary engineering report for the mechanical treatment plant in the Mill City area. And that's why we pursue the Mill City disposal site, testing, selection, and then really with Detroit and Idana at this point, that's where we're pursuing at this point, is to continue pushing forward at the McCoy site, investigating and testing, monitoring. And then those dashed lines really signify that at any point, we could get hey, this is a no-go. There could be a party pooper in there anywhere along the time frame, and we would go on to the next. We would go on to the alternate site and chase that down. So that's what those dash lines signify. Excuse me.
I don't think we're going to give many options for that.
Excuse me.
So I'm not going to give many options for that. So.
All right.
I agree.
Awesome. All right, I'm gonna move on from that one. Going into the collection system, I do need to kind of, it'll be a long night if we spend too long on some of these slides. So that one is an important one. We can come back. Detroit, this is gravity collection system. I'm gonna caveat, this is all gravity collection system. The STEP is the recommended system, but in the master plan, we evaluated the gravity collection system. It's more, takes a lot more analysis and evaluation in laying it out than the STEP system. So that's why we're presenting the gravity collection system. But what's important that this does show is the regional lift station here. Everything from Detroit would come to that lift station and then get pumped towards Idana in a regional force main. So even with the STEP or the gravity collection system. Idana receives the flow in the regional force main coming from Detroit, and then it also gravity through the STEP systems collects their flow all the way to the what we've identified as where I'd recommend putting a treatment plant. And then when it's treated, the current recommendation is to send it in a force main east of town in the Forest Service area to the McCoy site, where it would be disposed of by direct infiltration.
So it would literally go one direction, get treated, go the other direction up a hill.
Up a slight hill. It's not going up to Pigeon Prairie. We're not recommending that option. So, yeah, but yes, you are correct, Danielle. So, all right. This shows the overall concept for the basin, going from Detroit to Idana to the upper end of Idana. Yeah, typically, and Danielle, what you're hitting on is in a typical scenario, you want to gravity everything down to the bottom of the hill, treat it, dispose of it. In this situation, that's not the, recommended solution and the ideal solution, or I shouldn't say ideal. It's not what is being recommended.
Arthur had a question about who owns the McCoy site. That's actually the U.S. Forest Service.
Correct. Yep. And we are in discussions. We're working with them and having those discussions. So, all right.
Lost my pen.
So the gates system, similar to what you've seen previously, would collect it all to the regional pump station here on Sorvin. And then it would be pumped across the bridge through the south end of town out over to Mill City. Not much has changed. We did add some grinder pump locations here. There's a property tour here that we are adding. So there's a few minor modifications, just indicating where we're expecting to have some grinder pumps that are going to be required.
One of the requests, they were concerned about the water or the sewer line moving over the river. So just know that there is a concern on that, even though I kind of assured them that that happens literally every day, everywhere.
Yep, very much. Just finished a project in Newburgh where we're and it's a gravity line going across on an ODOT bridge, very similar to this. So it's very common. Thank you, Danielle.
Yeah, is this an ODOT bridge?
Oh, you know what?
I
think it's county. I apologize. I misspoke. The other one is in Newburgh. It's an ODOT bridge. So, all right. Mill City, existing system. You have the force main coming from Gates to the existing treatment plant site or water pollution control facility. Nothing changing with the existing Mill City collection system.
Because the alternative would be to abandon all of it and make it go gravity the opposite wrong direction, right? Or pumps. Right?
Yeah, and there's
the infrastructure in place for that reason.
Yep. Yeah, just for very logical and rational reasons, it doesn't make sense to tear out and create a whole new system. So this slide is showing the overall for the Gates Mill City Basin, Gates collection system, pumping to Mill City. Mill City's already collecting to that area, treatment plant location. And we show this site here. It's a potential effluent site. This is just happens to be the site that we did additional testing at. I do, I want to recognize, the property owner hasn't said, hey, this is we're going to sell to you, or there's work to be done there. And so if there's any thoughts or anything on that, on how to present that, but in the master plan, I want to present that it's been looked at, the soils are good, and we're allocating for a transfer pipe to get it from the treatment plant out to a disposal site. So that's the important factor.
Is that the full property, or is that a portion of the property?
That's a portion of the property.
And then I'm kind of saying this for Arthur, is there any land use issues we're going to have to deal with between Gates and Mill City, since they're outside of the urban growth boundaries?
So the pipeline between them, you mean? Yep. That would be a county, land use compatibility issue. Arthur, I don't know if you would add anything to that, but.
Yeah, I would handle that by calling McRae probably.
So I'm assuming it's going to be Lynn County though, because it is south of the river. So, okay.
Yep. All right. Recommendation for the collection system after looking at both gravity step systems, costing it out, doing life cycle analysis. It was close, but the step system does come in lower on a life cycle analysis. I know, that's something that I think residents we're kind of leaning to. Every time I'd get a comment, it was about, what are we doing with our existing septic tank and so on. But I wanted to do the analysis and make sure that we're not just, making a recommendation based on a hunch or a gut feeling or anything like that. But that's, factoring in the operation and maintenance. The gravity systems have their costs as well. And then also I think a major factor there, because of the rock depths, the shallow rock depths in the area, it made costs, quite high for a gravity collection system, the initial capital cost. And so that, also helped sway it towards a step system where the collection mains or the pipes in between are all very, relatively shallow, I should say, 3 to 4 feet, and much easier to construct when you're comparing to 10-foot plus potential depths for a gravity collection system.
Peter, I'm going to ask you a quick question. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes, please.
And I understand this, which is, I could have never said that 3 and 4 years ago. But I do have a question because I'm trying to anticipate questions. So for instance, my septic tank is behind my house in my backyard, as is my drain field. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean for any homeowner about all of this? I mean, all of this, because this looks so convenient as if it were in your front yard.
Sure. And that's a great question. I appreciate that. What it is, we accounted for a certain number of them that are going to need new septic tanks completely. Either they need to be plumbed to the other side of the house, or what happens is you have the step tank, which is maybe not represented here by the same relative size, but it's a smaller unit that pumps. And so it can be located in the backyard and pump out to the front of the yard.
Oh, so it would just be a really long pipe to low pressure collection system.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It would get where it needs to be with that low pressure pipe.
Okay.
Or like I said, or it gets plumbed out to the front of the house. And that's something that we'd have to look at look at specifically.
Yeah, and I don't want to get into the weeds. I just wanted a general answer. Good, thank you.
Hey, Shelley, this is Ken, but there's also something about low-lying areas that you'll need a pump if that's where your house is, in a low-lying area.
Yeah. Well, and with
Right.
those,
Yeah.
with those, Ken, those low-lying areas with the step system, actually, that is not a concern. We're not going to be having grinder pumps. It'll be all step systems.
Okay.
So those grinder pumps are for a gravity collection system. So this kind of does away with the difference, you know, in that system. So
Terrific. Good. Thank you. Because
Peter,
if I can explain it and understand it, then everybody can. Good.
There's a lot to it, Shelley. There's a lot
Yeah.
to it.
2 questions. You have Arthur asking, does the system-wide cost estimates include work to be done on private property?
yeah, we have tried our best to account for cost to get those the individual pipes out there. I'm not thinking of the word. I can't, under pressure, I can't think of that. But yes, we tried our best to account for that, Arthur. Not knowing that not every single one is going to need a longer pipeline, so we did some kind of average there to be realistic. So.
And then I have a question on, and I think we had a conversation about this before, so I'm just going to say it out loud. The initial capital cost is, if it is much cheaper for the gravity system for the initial, we need to kind of know if that is the annual cost is going to be that much cheaper or not, because I think we're going to have a better chance, honestly, getting the upfront capital cost, but not exactly as much on the backside when it comes to the annual operations and maintenance. And so if we can just make sure we're taking one more look at that. What
Okay.
do you remember what scenario was the not the step for all, but is it C? Do you remember?
It might have been D, I think. Dallin, I'm looking to you to help out with that question a little bit, but
I'm pulling it out the numbers here.
so Danielle, let me repeat what you're asking there is if the upfront capital costs are a little bit more, that might be better because, you know, and have a lower operation and maintenance costs. I'd have to look at that and see where those numbers exactly came in. You know, I can pick it apart with that in mind a little bit more. I guess I would ask the board, you know, what are your thoughts? What are your, you know, what is the board? How, you know, is that appropriate, Danielle, to ask?
The gravity has a lot of like manhole covers and big pipes and down deep digging. And to me, gravity would be more expensive in the long run.
So, well, I think in the long run, that's probably true, but you really want to look at the operation and maintenance costs because that's what people are going to see every month. And I think that's my more concern. If it's close, then it's not an issue, right? We can find ways to make that up that difference.
What do you consider close?
Well, Dallin, do you want to share some of those numbers? Let's just talk some numbers.
Yeah, so the option of having all communities on step systems is estimated for a capital investment of the ones that are installed, or the ones that would be installed as part of this project, is $51.5 million. If all communities, with the exception of Mill City, were on a gravity system, that's almost 60 million. So you're talking about a difference of about $8 million of capital investment. From a year-to-year cost difference in O&M, it's about $120,000 difference.
Okay.
Voila.
So 120,000 annually, it would be cheaper with the gravity versus the step, and that has to do with the pumping of the systems.
Right. Yep.
So.
And the big picture.
The big picture, the 20-year net present value, all step systems, that's present value cost is $5 million less, 65 versus 60.
Yeah. So we can move on with this, but I do want to take one more peek at those numbers and look what that looks like for operation and maintenance over, and what that actually looks like for each EDU, that difference.
Yeah, kind of look at the business case scenario of that model. So that's all right. We'll move on. This is the scenario that was recommended with the 2 basin plants. This is just a different way of looking at it as kind of as a whole. with the Mill City and Gates, Gates with the new step system, Mill City with their existing system, Gates being pumped by a regional pump station, and then combining at a new mechanical treatment plant, and disposing in infiltration basins. And Detroit and Idana, like new step systems, Detroit would be pumping to Idana, towards Idana, to the new mechanical treatment plant, and then disposal at the McCoy site with direct infiltration. As far as mechanical treatment plant, and I think Dallin might be, I think Dallin had told me, I think, is it the sand filters, or which one was the adjustment that needed to be made there?
Yeah, sand filters are not needed in this option.
Yeah. So I apologize for that. That was a last minute change I was working with Dallin on. So the sand filters would not be required here, but this is just a schematic of the mechanical treatment with the rapid infiltration basins or direct infiltration. I use those words synonymously. I apologize. I don't mean it to add confusion, but they do require more treatment than you would see in another location. The DEQ has communicated to us that they would be looking for a higher level of treatment. And so that's what this is represented here. So this may look familiar to some. This is a schematic of at that blowout road, old blowout road, or the CCC location. This is a plan view look. We had done quite a while ago, but this is what you might be looking at for a treatment plant. You have a lab and operations building here. You have, and I'll go to the next slide actually. It has a 3D, more of a 3D look at it with the operations building. Headworks lift station is where it comes in. And then it would go through the grit removal, through the process basins, where biological treatment, then it would go through the MBR basins, and then go through UV disinfection. And so it doesn't have the sand filters as Dallin had mentioned. And then your solids would be stored here, and then periodically, trucked out and disposed of. So that's that.
Does the highway actually have the turnouts already, or is this something we'd have to work with ODOT?
Yep.
Okay.
It is.
You have to go through ODOT to get it changed.
So it doesn't currently exist.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
No,
I didn't think so. I was just there the other day. I'm like, that's not there. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it is. It would require, some improvements there. So
Peter's just getting it set up for him.
Yeah.
Doing their work for him.
I'm just looking ahead and saying, there's trucks going to be going real slow, turning left, and that's real dangerous.
I'm also looking ahead and thinking, okay, who do I have to harass now at ODOT? So thanks.
Yep.
I got his name someplace.
I don't worry, we're good. And Jeff joined us.
Yeah.
Sorry, having technical difficulties here.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, welcome.
Almost had to throw the laptop out the window.
You're here, Jeff Smith. Good job.
All right. Moving on. This is the Mill City existing water pollution control facility. You've got the existing gravel bed filter here and the recirculating tank. You have the drain field, the checkerboard, type drain field with backup area or locations or backup land. What we're looking at is here. I believe this currently has FEMA trailers on it, if I'm correct. But that is prime real estate, prime real estate for for the treatment plant location. I'd rather put it there than to the east across the street. So.
So Janet, I'm going to ask, how long are those FEMA trailers there? Is it 18 months? Oh, sorry, we can't hear you.
Can't hear you, yeah.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, I believe it was 18 months. I'll have to double check it.
Okay,
that should be fine. Yeah, if it's 18 months, we're good. All right. As far as infiltration basins, you saw this picture on the left previously. The one on the right is just one I added. Kind of gives you a feel. I mean, they're ponds, and it just infiltrates directly into the ground. There's nothing too fancy. This is the site that was tested in the Mill City area. The Tom Finsel site was found that kind of ground truth the soils that we're seeing in the soils mapping. But as I mentioned before, the communication we had gotten from the property owner during that process was not totally favorable, and so there's work to be done as far as finding the specific site to make that happen.
And is there an alternative if they're completely non?
There's a couple different sites. Actually, let me go to the next slide. So as you remember, we had looked at the power easement, Blaylock, in areas and Gates, didn't like any of those. They did the testing on the Rock Creek, found it suitable, but it's also on a bluff. It's not ideal. It would take probably more investigation and studies than it would over at the Tom Finsel property. The Hazelnut property, again, we stayed away from just because of its beneficial use. Then you have what we're calling wastewater WWTP2 there. I believe it had enough property and it's closer to the existing treatment plant. I believe the soil types was similar. And so those are those backup areas, Danielle, that we would be looking at. You could also look anywhere kind of along that band on the edge of town there. I think the soils were, at least from what we ground truth, were supportive of that, and it would take additional testing. So,
thank you.
Yep. The McCoy site, so for disposal in the Detroit Idana Basin, this is something that should be familiar from the last meeting or two that we've talked about. This is the upper deck property. You have the quarry from that the Forest Service owns. We would not be disposing in the quarry, make that clear. It would be across the road or down the road a little bit towards the highway next to this parking lot are the kind of two general sites that we looked at to start investigating and do some additional tests and monitoring. The benefit to all this, just if you didn't remember, the benefit is that it creates a longer flow path, and we can get a straight face. Yeah, this is not directly connected with the river, and therefore obtain or be approved for a water pollution control facility permit as opposed to an NPDES permit. Yes, Shelley.
Peter, how long actually is that?
So from the quarry, it's 0.6. We're estimating it's 0.4 from the nearest site, and so far it's passing. We've talked with DEQ a couple times. The meeting next week is with more of the experts on the DEQ level. Tim McFetridge has been awesome and helpful, but again, he's not the one that's going to approve it. Eventually, it's going to go to the hydrogeologists and those experts to give the head nod and say, yeah, this meets the requirement or the passes the test. So
it's just over half a mile.
Correct.
Okay, good.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
Arthur, just so you know that this is the one for Detroit and Idana that would be fully compliant with the 3 basin rule. So that's kind of what he's trying to say in different words, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm following. Thank you. And I look forward to hearing what you learn next week. And if you are up for having a fly on the wall, I'd be happy to join.
I don't know. I'm actually going to hold off on that.
Yeah.
I would rather have less people than more. There's going to be quite a few from the DEQ, myself, GSI, down. I mean, it's going to be a pretty decent party size right now. And I appreciate the ask, but I would recommend no at this point. So
sounds good.
Yep. All right. This is another plan view of looking at that site from a different angle. So these are the two blue shapes here are where we're talking about. The quarry has the access road right here, right across from it. Looks like an appropriate location. What they're trying to target is this green area. That's that should be the right sediment, the right subsurface material to infiltrate, but then also this orangish yellow and then the pink is what is keeping it from going straight to the river and creates that longer path. So that's part of the strategy in selecting this area. So the next steps include, monitoring wells at these 4 or 5 different locations, test pits. The test pits would be first, just to even do some infiltration testing, and then followed up with monitoring wells, and that would be tracking that for a year.
Right.
It's not a quick process. So I just want to manage expectations in that way. This is something that they're going to have to monitor for a year, and then analyze and provide a report, a hydrogeologic report to DEQ. So, and that's what our meeting next week is, to say, what do you want to see?
So Peter, this is Ken. So you'd have to require the U.S. Forest Service land and the upper deck?
No, well, the upper deck just for the monitoring well. Whoop, geez, man, it is hair trigger on this thing. It's just a monitoring well is on the upper deck, and I talked with Miles. I can't remember his last name. Ken was very helpful. Made that contact. They're open to it. He did actually talk to the ownership group. Got back to me saying they're okay with it. GSI will work with property access, permission and all that kind of stuff. So they're a green light as far as allowing the authority to get on there and test it. And then the other part is just the Forest Service. We've gotten kind of the path of what we need to do to get approval. It's a process all in its own.
Right. So, thank you.
Yep. Did I hear someone else? No? Okay. All right, we are getting close to the end of my presentation, at least. So the cost summary is shown here. Broke it up so I could get a little more zoomed in on this, but the short-term improvements for Mill City, we're looking at the 176,000. Those are the various valves for the drain field, pumps, those types of things, just to get the existing system up to snuff to keep them going in the interim. The Mill City and Gates Basin, though, we're looking at the mechanical, abandoning that plant, ironically. Abandoning it, and then the Gates collection system and the transfer pump station and force main. And then likewise in Detroit and Idana, it's detailing all, and there's obviously a lot of detail, a lot of breakdown of all these costs and what they are and how we got there. This is just a very high level summary of what that is. So any questions? I believe that was the last slide I had as far as summarizing the master plan. And then we could, if there are no questions, we'll jump in and have Gordon cover the more interesting items.
So just, again, I have my council hat on. So we're looking at almost 49 million for Mill City Gates and 49 million for Detroit Idana. So almost $100 million
Correct.
total. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. It's just numbers.
Yeah.
Drop in the bucket for the project.
So
I know.
Remember that we said early on it was going to be 97 million. So we just didn't know that, not including, Lions and Mahama, that we'd still get to that 97 million.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, I did look at that this last week. So
That's all because of the 3 basin rule driving up the cost.
Some of it. And
Some
I think
of it.
that's the other pieces that we actually got from this too, is that some of it, like if we were to go all the way down pipe it all the way down to Mill City, right? I think that was like 113 million is what it was. More than that? Okay.
150.
150. So a third of that cost.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So we
yeah,
didn't-
this represents actually a pretty large reduction by GSI and us kind of getting our heads together and really scratching our heads a lot more and finding a potential solution that will avoid that. And so I don't want to have the what do you call it, eggs hatch before they're whatever, there's a lot to be done. So I just don't want to gloss over any of that. It's promising. But there's a lot to step through in getting through this whole process. And so it's both exciting and also a little, we got to kind of keep in the saddle, stay in the saddle and keep riding and see it through. So
we will. It also, we had Forest Service land. We have to deal with that. That drives up the cost.
Yeah.
Everything else was private property, but now we have to deal with Forest Service and all the studies and all the stuff they're going to want. So that drives up the cost also.
Yeah, and that force main Danielle was mentioning, where everything's going down to the bottom of Idana and then back up. Yeah, that adds cost. I mean, you're going one way and then sending it out the other and all that. So, yep.
This was a challenge. We all knew it. But we're going to ride.
Okay. All right. Any other questions before I pass it on to Gordon?
I have one. This is Jeff. I have one question regarding the Church Street bridge that you would tentatively be crossing. That bridge we bought used several decades ago, and it's due for refurbishing or replacement. We had a master plan on that a few years back. Is that going to affect this in any way?
What would be really great with that, Jeff, is if we can coordinate with the county, ODOT, and get some funding so that we can have a kind of bigger bang for the buck. If we've got to, hang a pipe on there, let's hang it on the bridge that's going to be there.
That's what I was thinking.
And that's where Arthur, Danielle, that's where, they come in and say, hey, they start putting people in a headlock somewhere and say, hey, we got this project, they need this anyways. It's probably been on a priority on your list for a long time. It's kind of the similar fashion that Danielle's always been talking about, the fiber optic, which seems to have already gone ahead and moved forward. But, you've got these trenches, can they be shared? Let's get a bigger bang for the buck and a greater benefit there. So I think that's a great comment, Jeff, that we need to track through as we step through the project and start doing that. But the time's now to start having those conversations. ODOT and some of those funding, they don't move quick. So it's a matter of starting to talk to them now.
Yeah, okay, great. I will bring that to the attention.
Yes.
Yeah, you and I and Jeff Smith and your city council, we need to talk about that one.
What's the name of the bridge?
Church Street
Bridge.
First, yeah.
Is what?
And I want to say, if Jeff,
Oh,
am I not?
that was three people speaking at once.
I think it's like 100 years old.
Yeah, we bought it used years ago, and I've had it inspected. It gets inspected every year, but it's been needing refurbishing. It's rusting and needs paint, but because of DQ and all that, we haven't been able to afford to do anything with it.
Okay, what's the name of the bridge again?
We'll talk on that one.
Church Street Bridge.
Thank you.
Gordon, take it away.
All right. Can I have control so I can share my screen?
Yeah, let me stop sharing mine to start. Danielle, does Gordon have permissions?
Yeah, he should.
I guess we'll find
Has
out.
to be one at a time. That's the only thing.
You see it?
Yep.
Sure do.
All righty. I just spotted a few numbers in here that might be incorrect. So the version that gets sent out will be, well, I'll go through and make sure every number is correct. Peter and Dallin spotted an error earlier this morning, and I thought I'd fixed it, but just now, 2 minutes ago, I found one that hadn't been fixed. So if any of you find it, you get a gold star.
Gordon, can you speak
Can you
up a
hear-
little bit more or move that foot? Yeah, thank you.
Can you hear me all right?
That's better. Thank you.
Okay. This business case analysis, we're trying to take a look at what it would take for this project to be financially feasible, and we made a bunch of assumptions in order about things that would drive the economic feasibility, and then we made some tentative findings and compared alternatives for the people to consider, and then we have some summary observations. So that's and that's the basic layout of this business case analysis. Note that at this stage, the analysis ignores phasing. And so the first 50 million versus later stages is not taken into account. It's all looked at as one single project. And it also ignores any ramp up period for connections. It generally takes some time. So it's not a year by year balanced forecast. It's more of a proof of concept type of analysis. But we do look, I'll walk through the capital cost assumptions and the O&M cost assumptions and the customer assumptions that I made. And then the tentative findings are a couple of tables that show how things might fit together given those assumptions. Capital cost assumptions, we assume two of the potential scenarios, one with a 3-basin waiver and the other without a 3-basin waiver. There's scenarios C1, E1, 83 million and 97 million are the two options. Let me just C1, E1 are down here. The 1, it means it's all step, and the C is 2 wastewater treatment plants, and that's the one that would require a 3-basin waiver. And then the McCoy site is the E scenario, and we're saying those are the ones we're looking at in this particular version of the business case analysis. However, the model is built that we could test other scenarios too. The costs include the steps and the laterals that are part of the initial construction project. This is important because typically a sewer utility will require property owners or developers to build their own laterals and their own step systems. I mean, that's what Mill City has done for the last 20 plus years since their original system was built. The original system included the steps and ladders just so everybody could get connected. But after that, if you want to build a new house, then you got to build it yourself. You got to do that stuff on the actual property, and sometimes sewer line extensions. So that's what's assumed here for future development. We did not assume any future development costs as part of the capital costs here. But we do assume that the current cost is the whole thing. All a property owner would have to do is sign on the dotted line and start paying a monthly sewer bill. They would not have to pay a connection charge. That's, again, it's an assumption. You can make decisions about how to structure this financially, but that was the thing that I assumed in this particular approach. Increase the size of the screen for it here. The initial grant assumption is 75%, but that's a variable that we test in the business case analysis. They're the most favorable state programs currently require a 25% local match. So that's a familiar percentage for the state people, but it's something that it's a starting point for percentage that we might be able to obtain. For the loan for the local match, part that we have to pay locally, we assumed a 30-year term and a 1% interest rate. That varies. Different state loan programs vary in their terms, so this doesn't necessarily correspond to any single program, but it's the assumption built into the numbers you'll be seeing. There are some other upfront costs that we included. First of all, we included some inflation. Those capital cost figures that Peter gave you, those are 2020 numbers. And so I assumed 3% per year for 3 years, just to get us in the ballpark. And all of these numbers are meant to be ballpark numbers. someone reminded me earlier today that even something that's out in left field is technically in the ballpark. Anyway, adding inflation adds 8 to 9.5 million to the project cost. It's a noticeable. Every year delay pushes up the project costs. It includes the assumed cost of acquiring the Mill City sewer system, which I talked with you about either last month or the month before. And that's a $3.6 million value for the fixed assets. Plus, I just made a guess, about 20,000 for vehicles and other equipment, plus assumed 310,000 cash reserves. Both of those numbers would be set to an actual number at the time of the transfer. So it's just an assumption at this point. Minus 2.15 million in outstanding debt. So those are the numbers that are involved in the Mill City assumptions. I also assume that there would be other upfront vehicles and equipment that would be required if you were to have a larger service area, particularly one that is more geographically spread out. So I threw in 50,000 for that. And so your total local share of the upfront cost is in the 20s after the grant assumptions. The annual debt service, the new debt for a 25% local match is around $1 million. And then you'd be assuming 150,000 Mill City debt service. O&M costs. There are two main ways to organize when you have a regional partnership. You can have an independent organization where this new entity is completely separate and has a separate headquarters building, a separate general manager reporting to a separate board, and everything is separate. There are examples of that. Clean Water Services in Washington County is like that. Road Valley Sewer, the Lot Clean Water Alliance near Olympia, Washington. Those are all independent organizations. A lot of times if you have a regional partnership that is only for treatment purposes, but the cities that belong to the partnership still own the collection systems, then it often makes sense to have the people at the plant have their own general manager, and they have billings already. So that's one recognizable approach. There's also an embedded organization where one of the partners is designated as the managing agency. Once again, there are examples all over the place. Hillsborough Water Commission, North Clackamas Water Commission, the Discovery Clean Water Alliance in Vancouver, Washington, just across the river in Portland, just formed a regional partnership a few years ago, and they intentionally chose this in order to save costs. But in this kind of scenario, the Mill City Public Works Director will report to both the City Council and to you. It does have a certain type of advantage which allows fractional FTEs that the sewer authority could continue the existing shared responsibilities with Mill City sewer, water, and roads, and it could also contract with other cities for shared personnel. The first option has clearer accountability for the managers, for sure. I mean, it's obviously awkward to have two bosses. But the second option is less expensive. The assumption in my analysis so far is that the North Santiam Authority would start out as an embedded organization. Who knows how it would evolve in the future, but at first, the initial project cost did not include a headquarters building, and the O&M cost did not assume a separate general manager. So I just wanted to be clear about that assumption. And the total customer base is about double what the Mill City sewer system is right now. So Mill City is about half of the total regional system in terms of equivalent building units. So they would be the logical managing agency if you're going to have a managing agency, not to mention the fact that they already have a sewer system. So, but the assumption here is that they would be. Once again, you can choose whatever you want in terms of how you actually do it, but I had to make some guesses in order to come up with some numbers. Keller provided ongoing cost estimates for the maintenance of the sewer system, the physical system, about $720,000 a year for the options that I was looking at. But those estimates exclude the admin and customer service. For the admin and customer service, I took the current Mill City budget for those functions and doubled it. And that's because the regional system would have about twice as many bills to send out. So it was just a way to come up with a reasonable ballpark estimate. And we end up with about a little over $1 million a year in O&M costs. Now, we've talked about capital assumptions, we talked about O&M assumptions. The other big type of assumption is customers. How many pocketbooks are out there who are paying the bills? This is the denominator. So the more equivalent dwelling units, or EDUs, the more EDUs you have, the lower the monthly rates. Here's where you want a big number. Costs, or the numerator, you want a small number. With the denominator, you want a big number. Our assumption for potential initial EDUs, that excludes new growth, entirely new, is about 1,696 EDUs. For Mill City, that's based on actual sewer customer data. I looked at it myself. It's a real good, solid, firm number. For the other cities, it's an estimate that was based on the number of pre-fire water EDUs. So there's some softness in that. And I know that the survey is underway to try to nail down a better estimate of the potential customer base. How many people can move back? How many people can rebuild? How many customers might be out there? We don't really know at this stage, but the thing we assumed was based on the pre-fire water EDUs. Once again, we assume no connection charge to property owners. We don't want to, in this situation, you don't want to make it any harder than it already is for people to connect. It's just starting to pay the bill is a big step. You don't want to also have a $19,000 connection charge. So, but this table shows how that 1,696 denominator, where that came from. And about 839 EDUs are already there in Mill City, but Detroit and Gates and Idana are the remainder. So those are all those assumptions. And how does it all add up? At the top of this table, this table works is what I'm calling working forward. You start with the capital cost and you end up with some rates. So if you assume an upfront cost of total upfront cost, including acquiring the Mill City system and including inflation, all that, your starting point is about 93 million with the 3 basin waiver and about 108 million without. If you get 75% of that covered with grants, which is, that's a great percentage, actually, just to put it in perspective. The late 70s, the old EPA grants, they were in about 70% range and led to some big improvements in wastewater treatment across the country. And if you could end up with 75, there would be nothing to complain about. But it might not be enough for this situation, but that's the assumption here. And that would bring in $70 to $81 million of grants. So your local share, the local upfront cost would be about between 23 and 27 million in this situation. The debt service, if you make those assumptions about the long term and the interest rate, the new debt service would be between 900,000 and $1,050,000. Add to that the Mill City debt service that you'd be assuming, and then you've got annual debt service of about $1,060,000 or $1.2 million without the 3 basin waiver. Our assumptions about the O&M cost are just over $1 million, and so the total annual cost, this is the numerator in a rate calculation. Total annual cost is between 2.1 and 2.2 million. If you divide that by the almost 1,700 EDUs, you end up with rates that are range from $103 to $110. those are big numbers, obviously. And I broke them into components, and the debt service part of it is between $52 and $59 a month, and the O&M part by itself is about $51 a month. One piece of good news is that with this late breaking option of the McCoy site, the 3-basin waiver is not as critical as it would have been otherwise. Earlier in this project, you were looking at numbers that were sharply differentiated based on whether you can get a waiver or not. And the McCoy site gives you, if it's technically feasible, of course, it depends on permitting and land acquisition. As Peter pointed out, it's not a simple process, monitoring. But if it's technically feasible, it narrows the cost difference between with and without the waiver. And that's a positive thing. So you're left with the main variables. The key variables are the grant percentage, the O&M cost, and the number of EDUs. Those are the big uncertainties out there that can really drive the rates. And again, number of EDUs, you want a high number. With the O&M cost, the grant percentage. With grant percentage, you want a high number so that your net local cost is lower. With the O&M cost, you want a lower number. And of course, the total project cost, you want a lower number because that reduces your debt service.
So Gordon, can I ask a question on that?
Yes.
The scenarios D and E are the ones that are 3-basin rule compliant. And then A through C are the ones that are not compliant. The most expensive scenario is A, right? The piping all the way down.
This little table shows you, shows everyone what you're talking about.
Right.
These
So the comparison though is river discharge, it would need a waiver. So we're comparing which ones, but next to each other. Are we comparing, I'm not sure if we're comparing the right things. If Dallin is saying it's $150 million for a 3-basin rule compliant, that's not the McCoy concept. Is that what I was hearing, Dallin?
Yeah, that's correct.
So the non 3-basin rule compliant one would be the difference of, like 98 million to 150 million.
Okay, this is the McCoy compliant one. That's scenario A, 150 million. And what was the non-compliant one?
And we're talking about the we're looking at E, is that correct?
Okay, no, E is the McCoy site. When I said the good news is the McCoy site, it's, this is the McCoy site compared to the put it in a pipe and take it all the way from Detroit to Mill City.
Yeah.
Right,
option.
but that's not what you're comparing is what I'm saying is on your.
That's not what I'm comparing. I'm comparing these red ones.
So I C, Danielle, C is if there was no 3-basin rule. So it's not 3-basin rule compliant. It's direct river discharge. It's the cheapest. And then the 97 million E is the McCoy site.
Right. So really what we should be comparing though on that top page that you were looking at is A and E.
Well, if the McCoy site, if what I was trying to say is, if you can get a waiver, then this is what the cost would be. If you can't get a waiver, the least cost option is the McCoy site. That's the E. But if you can get a waiver, the least cost option is C. It's this 97 million.
So what you're saying, you're saying you want to compare that option A, Danielle, as if the McCoy site didn't work out, that's the option we have, is to pump it down the hill.
Is that, that seems to me.
In real life, if the McCoy site didn't work out, you'd be pressing really hard for a waiver because that cost difference is just enough to blow
and that's Danielle's point. is that high cost is what, you take and talk to the, I don't know, legislature, Danielle, you talk to the funding.
Yeah, it's adding a third of the cost. It's adding, a 30+% increase for these communities. And so I just want to show that that is a shared experience because it's a shared benefit. So that would
So
be
Danielle, would you like to see that like a third column there with that one shown with the numbers?
Yeah, I mean, it actually shows, it says non-3 basin rule compliant, and it's using the wrong scenario is what I'm saying.
Well, I don't know. I would disagree. Because the McCoy site does fit that bill currently, and that's what I'm saying is it fits the 3 basin rule. And then if that happens to not work out with regulatory wise, then it would be the other one.
So this is all correct on this. This is not a problem. It's actually on the document that was put out where it says with the 3 basin rule waiver with no 3 basin waiver, you're still doing both. You're comparing the two that are feasible. You're not comparing from either side. Does that make sense?
Well,
the least cost option.
Can you pull up the presentation again, Gordon? You're saying the with 3 basin waiver and the no 3 basin waiver, that you're saying that one is what you're saying, but with the 3 basin waiver, that's the 83 million option. That's C.
Right.
Because you get a waiver and you can directly discharge. So that one is with a 3 basin waiver. If we don't get a 3 basin waiver, it would be option E, not option A.
And before the McCoy site
language piece, right? That really we're talking about something that's compliant with the 3 basin rule and something that is not compliant with the 3 basin rule, but a waiver could be without a waiver, right? We're trying to look at two, we're trying to compare and contrast.
Right.
I like the idea of putting the McCoy site as a middle column. People tend to gravitate to the middle option, and lots of times when they're looking at numbers or sales.
I like adding the third column, Danielle. We might be mincing some words and just I think we're just missing that there. But if you have the with 3 basin waiver, the no 3 basin waiver, we can change the terminology there, and then have the option A essentially is pumping it all the way down. It shows the spectrum.
Exactly.
And that's what I think your point is. I mean, that's more your point is showing that spectrum of the options and the effect, and more importantly, the effect on the resulting rates that would come out of that.
Yep, that's the difference.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll have to negotiate the top terminology, which is fine. So
well, the one at the McCoy site is the no 3 basin waiver least cost.
Yeah.
And the no 3 basin waiver, which is one wastewater treatment plant, single, pipe it all down the hill. That's the one we'd be adding. That's option A.
Yep.
So, okay.
Sounds good.
Now this is working forward, which is where you start with capital costs and then you end up looking at rates. What if you work backwards? What if you say, what's the maximum tolerable rate? And then what does that imply for the percentage we need to get of grants in order to make that level of rates achievable? Well, I tested it with 3 different options. One is based on 1.25% of median household income, which is a threshold for affordability as described in some of the state programs. I tested another with 1.4% median household income, which is another potential benchmark. I just made a rough assumption about a no-go limit, which was $100 per month. And that turns out to be approximately 2% of median household income. But my the median household income numbers were very rough and limited. They probably overstate the actual median household income because I didn't have data for just these communities. So I just averaged Lynn County and Marion County. It's very simple, but probably a little bit overstated. So, but those are the things I tested as a maximum tolerable sewer rate. If you multiply that by the potential initial EDUs, then you end up with the maximum annual cost of, 1.2 to 2.0 million. Make some assumptions about the O&M. Then you've got a maximum annual debt service, and then you have to incorporate the Mill City debt service. So your maximum debt service ranges from 41,000 to 855,000. Making those same assumptions about the long term. Once again, it's the same analytical process. It's just working backwards. You end up with another key variable, which is the maximum local share of upfront cost. If you want to keep it to $60 a month, your maximum local share of the upfront cost can only be 1.1 million. If you're willing to go up to $100 a month, then your maximum local share is 22 million. Well, how does that fit with what grant percentage would be required? Well, I looked at the total upfront cost, which includes some other things besides just the initial capital. And I said, okay, the implied grant funding you would need is 92 million or 88 million or 71 million. And what is that what is that level of grant funding as a percentage of what I'll call the eligible capital costs? I just assumed that a state loan or a state grant won't want to cover the cost of acquiring vehicles, the cost of acquiring Mill City cash reserves, that they just want hard construction. So in that case, the project capital cost, which is Peter's cost estimate plus inflation, that's the number, that's the 91 million, or with the 3 basin waiver, or 106 million without the 3 basin waiver. And so we end up with some percentages. With a 3 basin waiver, and that's the option, what was it, C? We would, in order to keep it to $60 a month, we would need to get more than the actual construction cost. In order to go up to $67, we need 97%. And in order for to hold it to $100 a month, it would be 78% that would have to come from the state. Without the 3 basin waiver, that is with the McCoy option, then you're still at 91%, 97%. The percentages don't change very much because there's so little headroom that gets washed out in the rounding. But it does make a difference if you want to go up to $100, and that is, it's instead of 78%, it would be 81% with the higher project cost. So,
and Gordon, some of these pieces, like the Mill City debt service and all of that stuff, if you add, $150,000 a year in debt service, that is getting at about $7 to $8 a month difference, right? And so if you can purchase it as an asset early on, in some ways that could potentially reduce the operation and maintenance costs over time, and actually reduce that number down. I was at about 58 that it could get down to if we reduced some of those other little pieces. But again, that's not including the updated numbers that Peter provided today. So we're right close to where we're at.
Yeah, I didn't quite follow how you got to the.
So you're talking about paying off the existing debt that Mill City has. So then you would eliminate that 150,000 remaining debt service.
Yep.
So,
And so we'd use
I
that
see.
then to, under the initial capital costs, not necessarily just for construction, but for
Right.
the setup and all of that kind of stuff. And what is also not assumed here is that not on a grant side, but on, if you're getting, if we do get direct appropriations, there's a reduction in the amount that we have to bring in. So I think we're really close. We're really close. That's why I didn't want anybody to get scared about the $100 a month, because I do think that would be definitely intolerable.
Well, both $100 and 81% are a stretch. One of my points is that it would take a lot. There's a really narrow pathway, but there is a pathway. It's just would be a real stretch for both community acceptability and for acceptability to the state. Let me point out one other thing that Danielle brought up earlier and might not have been completely clear. She was saying, we're assuming all step. We're assuming that the collection system is done with steps. And that was chosen because that's the lowest of the 20-year life cycle costs. But she pointed out accurately, which is correct, that the annual O&M is higher when you have step systems than it would be if you had all gravity, except for Mill City, which already has step systems. So if you compare collection system option 1 with option 2, there's a tilt. There's a difference between the relative favorability when you're looking only at the O&M versus when you're looking at the capital cost. Can you see that comparison there?
yeah. So Danielle, and Gordon, I mean, I look at that, that's about a $6 a month, right? 120,000, you spread that out again, to your point, Danielle, that's about a $6 a month difference, but it has a capital up front of 5 or 6 million more.
Yeah,
was that right? Or no, it was actually more than that. Sorry.
No, you got it right. It's a $6 difference between $51 and $45.
Yeah. No, I just mean the upfront capital. The upfront capital cost was more than 5 or 6 million. It was more than that, I believe.
The upfront capital would be more. But once again, we've got the model. We can choose. What I would do is plug in this blue option as the preferred option instead of the red one.
I think that's the Danielle's point of there's different ways to play with it, so it's not as scary. And I think what Danielle's saying with the appropriations is, you get the appropriations, that reduces the overall cost, and then that 75%, right, that is the high end of grant, actually brings that everything down into a better range. And so it's
and she's also made a good point, which is that it's easier to get outside help with upfront costs than it is for the annual
right now,
O&M.
especially.
Yeah. So this is a $6 difference between $51 a month in O&M and $45 a month in O&M.
Yeah.
If you had a gravity collection system, and every $6 helps, and you're not going to get help on an ongoing basis, but you might be able to make a case for getting more help with upfront. So the step versus gravity decision is affected, and also the decision about whether to pay off the Mill City outstanding debt versus just assume the debt payments. So anyway, she's made some good points here, and they're not included in the presentation that you see here, but it can be done. It's we've got the model built so we can play with those variables.
Hey, Gordon, I want to take a shot at the gold star. Is it that number right there, the local share upfront costs? Is that the numbers that needed to be updated still?
No, actually, Peter, when I fixed these numbers right here, I dropped in the new table. But I forgot to change all these numbers in the assumptions.
Oh, gotcha.
Capital costs. So
I was just taking a stab at it. I thought I'd try.
You didn't get the gold star, but
dang it.
Anyway,
Peter, how many EDUs will the system accommodate? Like, if we're able to increase the denominator, how far can we push that before we run up against the limits of your system?
That's an interesting question, right? I mean, the treatment, you can expand it, the treatment to what you need. I don't think that's the issue. So that's a really, it's a good question, but it's a very tough one to answer. I mean, just, Dallin, I don't know how you would answer that. I mean, we could, like I said, we can expand the treatment to be as big as you need, and those costs aren't linear. There's at certain points getting into bigger modules. Yeah, you'd bump into a higher cost increase.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have projections in there for 20-year growth, for fairly aggressive growth in terms of sizing pipes and treatment plants and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But like Peter's saying, once the collection systems are in, they're in, and they should be able to handle, 10% more, something like that, additional growth, without having to upgrade them significantly. So
I think the pipe size is probably not the constraint. It's probably the treatment
We
facility.
might have to have another conversation on that too, because I'm working with PSU and talking with them about their numbers, because they're talking about some pretty aggressive growth in numbers over a period, especially with not just the sewer system, but also adding in broadband internet. They're seeing a higher growth rate in the communities, especially small rural communities that have had those two pieces that go in. And so I want to make sure that our numbers do accommodate that additional growth. And Arthur, one of the things that we've talked about also is, making sure that there is some capacity to potentially take on some additional customers at the federal level, right? So you have the Forest Service up there and what that would look like. It doesn't mean that they would be in the initial piece, because we can't federal money to enhance federal properties. And so we have some constraints on that, but there has been just kind of thoughts about what that looks like.
I would also say, Arthur, to answer that question, now that I'm thinking a little bit more, we had a pretty decent industrial commercial growth component outside of the percentage growth in population. So we accounted for having some new business and industry and things like that to be able to expand with. And so at the end of the day, the more EDUs you get, it's going to be better. I think it actually will turn these equations more favorable no matter what you do. The more EDUs you get, I don't think the cost is going to go up at the same. It's actually going to be it spreads it out more. And so it's something that we can, as we go through the facilities planning study, as they get the survey done, as they get, gather more information and look at that, we look at the facilities planning study and the PER, that's going to get honed in and get better detail on it. So.
Okay, shall I go forward? I've got one more type of analysis to show. And that is compared to what? For any given set of customers, we've got two groups of customers. One already has a sewer system, that's the people in Mill City. And the other is people who are on septic, who are not in Mill City. So what are their alternatives? Well, in the case of Mill City, what if they were to, go it alone, continue to go it alone, not be part of a regional partnership? They would need some short-term capital investment, just to stay in business. 1.7 million of upfront costs. I assume more like a market rate financing. I don't know how, but either way, financing is pretty cheap. And then I also made an assumption about additional O&M costs. And I should have talked to you about this, Peter, but I forgot in time. But I made an assumption about 100,000 of additional O&M costs that would be needed if they were on their own, but had to upgrade their treatment processes in order to stay compliant. That's an additional $220,000 spread out over 839 EDUs. It adds $22 to the monthly rate. So the folks in Mill City, no matter what, aren't going to be living with $44 rates for very long. Either way, they're looking at $66 as a frame of reference. Well, if their choice is a $60 or $67 regional rate, well, that's a no-brainer. That's great. If the choice is a $100 rate, that's a brainer. Becomes a closer call, because this is just for short-term improvements. With long-term treatment plant costs, it's driven by regulatory requirements, and that is a one-way street. So there's definitely risk if Mill City were to continue to go along without being part of a larger utility. It is a judgment call that would need to be made, but at the above loan terms, every $1 million in capital improvements adds another $7 to the rate. And every 100,000 required O&M adds another $10 to the rate. It wouldn't be too much in the form of required upgrades before they got to $100 anyway. So the question for Mill City, should they join continue to join the regional system or not? It's a fair question to ask. And if their decision is to continue to stay in the regional partnership, the economic rationale would be a long-term consideration. It's this just this instinct about what happens with regulatory requirements and what can be.
And that does not accommodate, though, any additional growth. That is just the initial short-term capital. And they do have
that $1.7 million. I don't know if it allows more EDUs.
It does. It does. It does. Sorry, I didn't know if I was on mute or not. It does add for some growth.
Yeah.
Some growth
but over
being
the long term. I'm sorry,
I don't know off the top of my head, Dallin. Do you remember that number of how much? I think we had it more about in flows. It was 255,000 gallons per day versus the current 108, 100 or 200,000. I think it is, Dallin.
Just shy of 200,000. It's effectively, so the plant has seen, they've had events where they're right at capacity. That one wet weather event that occurred a couple years ago, I think it was. This would get them, with this expansion, it would get them to 80% capacity in that kind of event.
So if they'd only get to 80%, at 85%, you got to start planning for another expansion.
Exactly. So what you're saying, there's a lot of truth to that, Gordon. But I just want to say there is some growth in there.
Well, under state rules, when you get to 85%, you got to start the planning process for the plant expansion.
Yeah, I mean that's why we call it a short-term improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 5 years down the road, if they get a growth spurt, they're going to be looking at another plant expansion. And so I just don't think $100 is out of range for them. But we don't have numbers to back it up. This is where I show the short-term rate, probably for the next 5 years or so, at least being in the $60 range. What about people who are not in Mill City? What are their options? Well, this is a lot harder to pin down because it's basically a matter of risk. The numbers in the upper part are based on conversations with Peter and Dallin, and I made a few phone calls. The one with Hobson Service was the most helpful for the cost of pumping. The question there is, if you're now on septic, then if you convert to public sewer, you get a guaranteed monthly cost in exchange for reduced risk of a very large unplanned future cost, and reduced risk of possibly being in an untenable situation because the lot is not big enough. You might just not have the land if your septic fails to be able to put in a replacement septic system that meets the requirements. So even if you had $35,000, you might not have the space. So there's a big risk out there for septic owners. But of course, people's perceptions of risk varies, and that's the judgment call you'd have to make. If we're approaching this, what I was assuming is the no-go limit of $100 a month, then a lot of them would say, wow, well, I'll take my chances. Or a lot of them might say, our community's going to die if we don't do something to get on public. What looks normal? This is a slide I put together just to address the disconnect between what looks normal to you and what looks normal to me. I'm an outsider. I'm not there in that area, and I'm not looking only at my neighbors. If you're looking at your neighbors, you see a resident in Salem or Staten or Mill City spending 40 to 60, maybe up to $76 a month, and that looks normal to you. Those are well-established, long-standing sewer utilities. However, in my line of work, I deal with a lot of new sewer systems or existing sewer systems with rebuilt treatment facilities. And $100 a month looks quite normal for the kinds of conditions you're in right now. You've got either, if you have a new wastewater treatment plant, you might be up to $100 a month, or if you just have a new system with very few customers, that can also push your rate up a lot. And in this case, you'd have both conditions. So that's just a bit of perspective that I know there's shock. You know, when I threw this out at $100, and once again, in my line of work, a 3-digit sewer rate is a psychological trigger point. It really is hard when people get to that point.
Gordon, I'm just going to interrupt. I got my sewer bill today in Portland. $46.25 every month.
There you go.
And that also includes surface water management.
That's what looks normal.
I'm looking at Salem, and Salem looks, and Mill City looks what I look at as normal. I'm having a heart attack looking at Silverton and Staten. So, I mean, everything you're saying is there's no denial of what you're saying, but I am having an absolute heart attack thinking about my people.
Yep, that's what I'm trying to address here.
Yeah.
I've got 3 types of summary observation points. One is that there is a narrow pathway, very narrow, but this project can be financially feasible. If the state's willing to fund 81% project costs, and if all potential customers are willing to connect with the $100 rate, then it works, ignoring the phasing and the ramp up in connections. Those are some big ifs. Next point is that acceptability can be influenced by the lack of other options that preserve the environment and allow future development and redevelopment. If you're just stuck and you can't rebuild your house without having more land, and then your community's going to die off, you have to move out, that's not a good option either. That pushes the state to be more sympathetic to your funding requests, and it pushes local people to stretch harder in terms of their acceptable rate, if you just don't have other good choices. And another point here is that community acceptability may depend on a long-term view. With Mill City, we talked about that. You know, they're in the $60 range in the short term, but it wouldn't take too many years before they'd have to rebuild or expand, and that's going to push up the rate. And for property owners with septic systems, it's entirely a matter of risk. And it's hard to judge, but there is risk that they would not be able to replace a failed septic system. So that's my second point. My first point is there is a pathway. You know, it can happen. Second point is there are some big unknowns, but that long-term view is critical. And the lack of other better choices can also make a difference. The third option, I'm going to press this point. I would say it's true that to the degree that the grant funding exceeds 81%, the average monthly cost will be less. It could be way less than $100. It could be in the 60s. That would be great. Hallelujah. We're all happy. However, it's also true that new systems with few customers tend to be more expensive per customer, and systems with newly built treatment facilities tend to be more expensive per customer. And you would have both of those characteristics. So, and for systems in that position, $100 a month rates are not uncommon. And the O&M costs alone right now are $51 a month. So the thing I'm just going to lean on a little bit is to say, considering the question of community acceptability, I think the $100 a month should be in the conversation. It shouldn't be written off as impossible. It should be, wow, how do we avoid that?
So Gordon, I can tell you right now that $100 a month is not going to get anywhere close.
It is not going to happen.
No,
Yeah.
it
Okay.
won't fly in any of our communities
Nope.
at all. It kills the project.
It'll
Sorry.
be
Yep.
dead on
Okay.
arrival, Gordon.
Yep.
So
All right.
here's the thing though, I'm just gonna
And
say
that's the
that
choice.
that is not the only method,
You
right?
don't have a choice. It's not going to happen.
No,
No,
it
no.
won't happen.
The $100 won't, but here's the thing. There are other approaches that we have options for, on the funding side, on using some funds from the Marion County side. There are a lot of things, variables here. You know, Gordon's working on the knowns that we have.
Yeah.
Right now we have a whole bunch of unknowns. So he's doing his very best to be honest with the numbers as he's seeing them. What Gordon hasn't gotten all the pieces yet to is what PSU is saying the forecast is looking at. Their PSU forecast and your EDUs changes this whole calculation. The last time I spoke to them, they were at 2,100 EDUs. Now I think that's way too high, but I'm saying that there's a lot of unknowns right here. And I'll tell you, Gordon, for sure, USDA is not going to help fund something if it's not actually affordable, because you have to be able to maintain it, right? So what we need is, you know, we've been working with the city of Salem, we've been working with some of the other partners to say, hey, this is really expensive here. And some of it is because of the fact that there is a 3-basin rule. We need to know kind of what that looks like, right? We're trying to make that argument. So I'm just telling you, the feedback you're getting is absolutely, it's not going to happen. And I agree, it's not going to happen. So we need to find what is the magic number to make it happen. If we need to ask the federal government and the state government and the county for 101% of the amount to get it to an affordability rating of that 1.4% of median household income, that's where we're at. We just need to know what that guiding star is. I think it is at that 98 to 100% grant up front, and then purchase the property with Mill City up front, and then have the operations and maintenance. And that's where I think that's $6 makes a difference, right? That operations and maintenance piece every month, you know, we have to keep that low enough that it's sustainable for the long term. I see Janet has her hand raised.
Yeah, I just want to kind of state right now, that would take my total bill for water and sewer up to $150 a month. And I think even we did a sewer raise of like a $1.50 a couple of years ago, and we had a revolt on our hands. Even the $60, Danielle, I think it's gonna cause a revolt in the canyon. I don't know. The numbers really concern me, even getting it down to 60. I understand what Gordon's done. He's done a great job. I'm kind of learning to do some of this stuff, so I'm impressed, but the canyon's not going to buy even the 60. It concerns me. That's what I want to say.
Yeah, and I have to agree. I mean, and Gordon, nobody's mad at you, believe me.
Sure. No, I understand.
You're the numbers guy, and you're just doing numbers.
Yep.
But Detroit already pays $60 a month for water. And they are those who live there full time, and even those that don't. I mean, that's even a harder sell, is to those who have a second home, that you're saying now that it's going to cost me $120 on my empty lot, that where I bring my RV. Or those who live there full time because they live there for socioeconomic reasons. Now it's going to cost me $60 more when it was free to flush my toilet last week. And the people have already gone through a horrible, devastating thing, and the costs are just astronomical for what they're going through right now. With trying to rebuild, and then it turns out they're only getting $35,000 for their lost home. I mean, things like that. Again, I'm not upset with you. I'm alarmed. I'm horribly, and I'm a little bit sick I'm a lot sick to my stomach. We told everybody, oh, there probably won't even be a hookup cost, and it's only going to cost you $50 a month, period. So this is a giant pill to have to take tonight, and yeah, this is bad.
No, I agree with Shelley. Gordon, we're not upset with you, it's just shocking numbers.
Yeah.
Because we know what we've
I agree.
communicated with all the communities and what we believe the cost would be. Hey, we know there's ways to do it. We will figure out a way. Even if you push $70, that is stretching it. That would probably be the max that anybody could deal with, plus the $60 water fee. But we'll figure it out. There is a way. We're not giving up. But this is a shocker. You're good with your numbers. It's great. I mean, but we know the canyon. It's not acceptable.
Yeah. Well, and I trust your judgment about that. And so the big focus of the project is how to avoid that. You know, when I say that $100 needs to be part of the conversation, that becomes the thing to avoid. We need to get it down.
We're working on it.
I agree with you on this.
Thank you, Gordon. Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news.
Oh no, it's not bad news. You're just,
but it
it's
is
a reality
situation.
It's a reality check. I did a lot of, Danielle had me doing a lot of research up into Washington and the Sound and the eastern part. And their rates were as high as $200 and some dollars in some areas. And they even made the comments that over $100 it wouldn't be acceptable. So I understand all that. I've seen all that, but as in the canyon, like Shelley has said, and Janet has said, that look at, they're rebuilding. Their cost has gone up 300%. And their insurance company settled real fast. And now they're all going, oh my gosh, what do we do? So a lot of people are selling. We have a lot of promising talk between, you know, through the community about people investing and want to, you know, join in and rebuild and also build. I mean, hardware stores, motels, hotels, all that stuff. So yes, we got to get the EDUs up. We really do. So that's what we
Part of
got.
the answer. Part of the way to avoid it is more EDUs. Part of the way is more grants. Part of the way is converting, as Danielle was suggesting, converting ongoing costs into upfront costs, which are more it's easier to get outside support. So those are some ideas. Those are good.
We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it.
Oh, I've been impressed with this community. I'm rooting for you.
Thank
I
you.
hope that 5 years from now I can take my grandkids up the canyon and flush the toilet and have it not be a porta potty. That's my goal.
Yeah, we want to eliminate porta potties.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. Well, that's
On that cheery note.
Hey, Gordon, come on. No, we gave you what we have to deal with in our communities.
Oh, I know.
You know,
And
it's like Shelley.
Yeah, and I'm trying to equip you.
Well,
I'm trying to equip you with the, you know,
information.
best understanding I can, but it's tough. It is really hard.
It is.
And
it's all good. It's all good.
I have family that lives in Kashmir, and nobody in Kashmir was happy.
No, but see, the difference
are they
is.
still there?
Yeah.
Yes, but she refused to transfer over.
Well, here's the difference. For us, someone who's already hooked into a sewer system, then the plant needs to be rebuilt. This is a situation Mill City would be in. They're already hooked in. They don't have a septic system anymore, and so Kashmir or on Whidbey Island, the Oak Harbor, you know, all of a sudden they just have to start paying more because the treatment plant got rebuilt. But the really tough situations where they do have an option, they are on septic right now. Persuading people to sign on to a new service at that really tough psychological threshold, that $100 benchmark is really hard for everybody. I just don't know how you do it. I agree with you. That's something to avoid.
Well, the other thing we discuss and talk about in the community, I'll say in Detroit, is if their lot is so small and they don't have a secondary a site for the backup on a septic, then it's going to cost them $30,000 for advanced technology. What do you want to pay? And then that has a monthly service fee. The whole ball of wax. We understand the big argument. It's just a shocker, and we all reacted like that. Ain't gonna have. You already understand how we reacted.
Yep, I sure do, and I don't think you're wrong.
No, we're working on it. We'll work on it.
Yep,
really will. We'll make it happen.
Right.
And that was great. Oh, no. Oh boy, what a reality check.
Well,
I'll correct those couple slides that had some wrong numbers, send an updated version to Peter so it can go out to everybody.
And that third column is great.
Yeah, I think you need a frame of reference.
Mm-hmm.
You need to say, this is what we want to avoid.
Okay.
All right.
So technical review scheduling is on the 10th. So Ken and Dale are on that for the technical review. That is at 1:30.
Yes.
And then public hall we have not scheduled that yet, McCrae. We wanted to get feedback from today before we went ahead and scheduled. So we'll have to have a conversation about that maybe tomorrow, if you guys are still up for tomorrow morning. And then master plan completion date. How do we, and this is just a guesstimation, do you think you'll be ready by the July 1 or the July, whatever the July meeting is for the sewer authority?
I think we can be ready after the TRC. We can turn around and get the draft all put together. It kind of depends on the process that that you'd like to see happen. The heavy lift has happened. Now it's about getting that first section together and making. It kind of depends on the TRC, in revisions and comments and things like that, and we can kind of make a judgment call from there.
So then I'm going to ask around, does the sewer authority want to have a work session just to talk about this one more time before it comes before for the master plan?
Before the master plan or before the
so if we bring it to July, there is a hope, and again, that's just could be a hope, that it could be approved from the sewer authority as an approach. It doesn't mean that we lock in all the numbers. It doesn't mean all of that stuff. What it just says is we're going to go for this approach and we're going to move that direction. So I'm leaning on you guys for your, Arthur was also popping his.
Maybe it's a tacky question. I'm going to ask it anyway. Can you finish the master plan before getting DEQ to buy off on your approach with the McCoy site?
We will not get 100% buy off or approval from that before we do any master plan. It's just the DEQ will not do that. We've been actually fairly fortunate in the interaction we have been able to coax out of them, I feel. So we've actually made better progress than I probably anticipated as far as that's concerned, because they just don't have the mechanism to say, okay,
right,
this is good. Until we get a facilities planning study or a draft permit in front of them, they don't have the mechanism to have an official response or a stance on any of it.
So Arthur, they did put together a letter for us just to kind of give us some bumpers, right? Just of what they really wanted to kind of see.
Yeah.
But it was non-committal in any way. So just kind of know that.
It
I know they
regurgitated a
don't-
lot of 3 basin rule stuff. It was
Right.
all, yeah.
I know they're not like Oregon Health Authority in that they don't bless your plan, but it sure feels like you want maybe not 2 thumbs up, but at least 1 from them and from the Forest Service, right? Because your plan is,
Yeah.
That's what they want.
And that's the thing is, I mean, we can approve the plan saying this is the plan, but then the
Right.
plan also has, this is option B, this is option, you know, these are the next, you know, it does have those in there because any best plan. I mean, because there's also decisions to be made, like Danielle's saying. I mean, if the sewer authority wants to go with a higher capital cost and do gravity systems, but to realize a lower operation and maintenance cost, that's an option there. And I mean, that doesn't have to be decided in the master plan. I mean, that's something that can be decided afterwards as well, in my mind. Those are making the financing side of things work type of decisions.
So Danielle, you want to know if we want to have a work session to review the master plan and make a direction, or, you know, or
Let me rephrase that a different way. Do we want to have a goal of having a master plan approved by July?
yes. But I just say yes. Anybody else?
Can I be sorry, I'm not on the board, but let me be the devil's advocate. Is there a rush to have that approved in July as opposed to taking, you know? And it seems self-serving of me to kind of say that, but I also mean realistically, or it's the real question of, you know, we meet with the DEQ next week, we meet with the TRC, we see how that goes, we kind of go forward. Danielle, I don't know from your side, from the legislative side going forward, is there a good reason to say, yeah, we need to have that approved as soon as possible? Does it change any of those discussions? Does it change any of the, you know, the context there?
I wanted to approved last month, Peter. Yeah.
I hear you. I hear you.
It's just the communities and what we're going through, and
Yeah.
we need answers. We need a direction. And,
Sure.
and just to push on it. But
Sure.
That's all.
So Shelley, do you have something?
Well, I wanted to hear what you had to say, Danielle. Yeah.
So there's no rush, right? So if the legislature comes back in end of June and says we're going to fund this, whether or not we're 30 days off, right, or 60 days off, really it's not going to make a huge difference. What it makes a huge difference on is the Mill City side. Mill City they need some work desperately, and we can't get started on that work until we get approval of the master plan. And then the county has been offering to pay for these things. And so, you know, my budget doesn't hit until July 1 to start taking the next piece. But McCrae and myself and Peter are going to have to work on what the contract looks like. And only, you know, selfishly for us is I would love to have something in hand to say what is actually in the master plan is going to be in the contract.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, this has always been led by you guys. I've just tried to support.
If I may interject, this is Jeff Yoet. I think if we could push that out to August just to give us a little air to digest all this information.
Good point. Good point. We've made it this far. Another 60 days.
And technically, we wanted it done 2 years ago, but the wheels of government turn slowly.
Can you repeat that, Jeff?
I said technically we wanted it done 2 years ago, but the wheels of government turn slowly.
Ouch.
Thank you, Jeff.
So let me rephrase back what I thought I just heard. So some of you want it done this month in June, and then some are saying August. So what if we compromised and we did July?
Well,
I totally get where Danielle is coming from, that we got to get this stuff set, and as far as legislatively and things. But I think with what Peter's trying to indicate, because I do point, like, as if you can tell where I'm pointing, that with a couple of steps that you guys still need to make, that will we be in fact rushing to get it for the July meeting? If we could have a work session in July, and I know I know, Danielle, that postpones what you need to do, but then we would be ready 100%. Because are we even, when is our July meeting? I mean, I'm still trying to figure that out as well. But
The town hall meeting?
no, our meeting. But that being said, regardless of when that's going to be, if we could have
July 1 is the date.
okay, that's kind of what I figured. So if we could have a whole month before we, so if we don't work, sorry, I'm really tired. If we don't try to have a work session in June, and let's say we do it right after the next meeting, how bad is that for you guys, Danielle?
It's not bad.
I think we can make, yeah, I think we can make that work with the Mill City situation there, Danielle. I think that we know kind of where we're at and we know where we're moving. I don't think it's going to get railroaded drastically as far as the technical side of things. So I would, Danielle McCurry, we can talk about more as far as the town hall, but is it, I just have that gut feeling that we want to have the town hall meeting before we adopt it, obviously. I think having the board hear the discussions, the questions and things like that at the town hall meeting will help. That's just me. And we got to get that scheduled and advertised and happening. So I realistically, I don't think a July 1, if that's the next board meeting, I don't think an adoption on July 1 is really the right path.
We're still going to do the board meeting times and dates. We need to see if we're going to move the Thursday to a Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to do it because that's July 4th. We don't want to do it in July. So
I just think either a late July or the first week of August is as far as approval. You know, gearing for that as far as an adoption and approval is seems to be the time frame. So
then let's shoot for August.
Okay.
That's what I'm hearing. And then let's schedule a work session so we can actually dig in again with some updated information and get the schedule ready for the town hall.
Yeah.
And the TRC and the DEQ meeting and all of that stuff. And then we'll schedule a work session before, and then if it doesn't happen in August, then we might have to have a special meeting later in August.
Yeah, I think we do definitely need to not dither any longer than August. We have to just get this going. I mean, I know people, it's not so much the people in Detroit, though it is. And I know it's a long ways away, even as it is for Detroit, but they do want answers, and it's the businesses now that are really waiting to hear and waiting to know. So
there's something else that was brought up. Penny Keene, when I was talking to her, she mentioned that can we address the RV dump sites? Could we have one in Detroit or Idana or Gates in Mill City? Is that possible?
Honestly, I'll make sure I send that over to our emergency management office.
Yeah, because there's no more RV dump sites anywhere close that I know of. So that's for everybody coming up and visiting, spending money. Is there anything else on your presentation?
Sir.
Thank you guys for everything. Thank you. Okay, we have talked about the board meeting times and dates, and Danielle was correct. If we move it to the first Monday, July, it would be July 4th would be the first one, which is unacceptable.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at trying to have a meeting before, you know, most of the communities have chosen to have 2 meetings a month. They're Tuesdays, they're Wednesdays, there's Thursdays, trying to be ahead of them, you know, so they can go back with information. So, you know, a lot of the board members especially have said Monday sounds good. Do we want to address that right now?
I personally don't. My schedule is very flexible, so I'm open to whatever the consensus is to the board.
So Monday, I'll just throw this out there. If we make a change right now while we're trying to get actual feedback from people, I would be hesitant until after the master plan is approved. That's just my only thought on that, is you don't want to make other big giant changes while we're trying to figure this out.
Shelley, you had something?
No, I'm looking just at the next 3 months, and ironically, the 4th of July and Labor Day are both the first Mondays of the month this year, ironically, which means maybe we should wait till after Labor Day.
No, hey, no, I'm open for suggestions. I am. So
I mean, I'm just like, oh my gosh. I mean, what are the chances? And then that's what I looked at him, sure enough. So I would definitely, I'm in favor of this Monday concept, but I think it behooves us to perhaps look to do it officially starting maybe October, which is the 4th. And it's a simple, normal October 4th kind of day. And that avoids the 4th of July, and it avoids Labor Day, because we're all trying to avoid Labor Day this year as it is. So,
okay. Janet, you had something?
I'm pretty open. Mondays will be fine. My busy nights are the Tuesdays and the Thursdays, so.
Joel?
I'm just busy on Wednesdays, so Mondays work for me.
Well, let's change it to Wednesday then. No. Jeff Smith, are you still around? He threw out the laptop.
Yeah, I'm still here.
What do you think about Mondays after Labor Day?
Yeah, it sounds fine to me, just as long as it's not any later in the evening than it is now.
So we try. Okay, let's put this off until the end of summer.
how does that address Tim Kirsch? Does he work on Mondays as well?
He works late on Thursdays is what it is.
He was open. He was open to it.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure that we were taking him into account.
Yeah, he was open to it, and it would Thursdays is his busy day. So
yeah, okay.
And Wednesday's out of the question. So he's right with Joel. All right, let's put that off, table that, or put it off. Population and income survey update.
So I think we can actually hold off on the rest of the agenda.
Okay.
Kind of late, and I don't like to take up all night.
No, we are 20 minutes over, 21.
Yeah, my phone's about to die.
Okay, budget development, we're gonna table that one. And next meeting topics, real quick, like any suggestions?
So I think the two pieces that we're holding off, and then the master plan, and I think the last one is the policies and procedures that Joel has worked so hard on.
Excellent job too. Thank you, Joel. All right. What a meeting.
And a legislative update at that point.
3. Okay. So we have three. Let's update. Show me the money. And our next meeting,
It's July 1.
July 1st is, where's my July? Oh, that's the Thursday. And this would be via Zoom again?
I think we have to at this point.
Okay.
And then August, can somebody give me that August date and September dates for the first Thursdays?
August would be 5th, wouldn't it? Am I right?
Mhm.
Yep.
Yes. September is 2nd.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was a great meeting. Whew.
Yep.
All right,
Thanks
everyone.
everybody for letting me join. I appreciate the chance to learn more about your project and look forward to working with you.
Well, you show up anytime. Show up anytime.
Yeah.
Right now, it's the first Thursday of every month.
At 6 o'clock.
That's right.
Bat station, same bat channel.
Yeah.
Anything else from anybody?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I second that.
You did it. You did it. All right. It's 8:24. It is June 3rd, not jumping forward. Thanks everyone for their participation. And the meeting is adjourned.
All right, thank